Could they erase all the shots? Was they connected dots? Under the docks, under the docks, yeah, under the docks. Yeah, under the docks.
Welcome back to another episode of Under the Docks live edition recap of the last 3 documentaries that we've done.
Live edition recap.
Recap remix with Paranoid American and Sean Chris. The 3 documentaries we discussed was All for Floyd, Trayvon Hoax, the Trayvon Hoax, and Am I Racist?
Yes. Oh, you mean the movie name?
Oh, oh, I thought that was a question.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we had planned this out just a little better, we'd be doing this live stream on Juneteenth. We're close enough, but next year, there's always next year that we can do this. I don't even know why this one in particular. It just, first, you suggested All for Floyd, and I was like, oh, I know another one that's kind of like that called the Trayvon Hoax. And then we were trying to figure out what would round it off for that third one. And I think the Matt Walsh, Am I Racist, was a good one. There's a bunch of other sort of like race-related documentaries. It didn't start out that as the theme, and it just kind of naturally evolved there. So here we are, two white guys talking about a bunch of racism documentaries.
And just for some inside baseball, like we were like kind of getting this formula on the fly. You'll see it normally, how it's changing. This was actually the 3 that really where we're like, yeah, we should just stick these to, you know what I mean? And then going forward, it kind of set the pace of what we're doing now of trying to get like 3 documentaries that kind of have some kind of relation towards each other.
Yeah, a couple of the other things too that we're starting to figure out. I think you'll see it in these 3. If you watched all 3, they're all available now. Is that we went from having like a convoluted rating system where it was kind of like good, bad, worst type of thing. Now we're starting to simplify it to just good or bad, just sink or swim. And I think that that's a little bit more interesting because you're not allowed to sit on the fence as much.
Yeah, because we were kind of I was getting cop outs where I'm like, well, it's kind of a, it's a shallow dive. And like, yeah, it just makes you have to decide, does it swim or does it sink? And I think that rating system has much improved because it kind of makes you critique the film much harder, even for some bias. Obviously, there's some loose change. I'm not going to mention names, loose change, probably biased a little bit. There may be some in the future that we're a little biased on because they pluck on our heartstrings, our nostalgia. But I think these 3 were good. I think that we both agreed on all of these. I believe so. I think both I Am Racist. I think we gave it a sink. And we gave All for Floyd a sink, and I think Trayvon Martin a swim. I think, again, we also broke down the criteria of why it's a sink. So just for people to understand, when we're saying it's a sink, it doesn't mean the film's necessarily bad. We even said we were entertained by the film I Am Racist, but it could also mean it's bad. But the sink,
we got our own criteria because
yes.
Mine, I'm starting to realize as we do this series, because it's weird, like being forced to make a call on that. Then I got to think like, well, why? And if someone comes at me, how can I back this up? And really, my biggest criteria is: do I learn something new, and does it change the way that I view, the world from that point forward? And there wasn't a whole lot with the All for Floyd that really like rocked my world. There wasn't a whole lot with Am I Racist? Again, it was entertaining as hell. It was a movie that you could definitely pass time and like have some chuckles over. And likewise, the Trayvon Martin hoax, I don't even know if I would recommend that to most people. It's really campy. It's silly. It's about such a very specific thing. And it's not like he changes the world with it, but it absolutely blew my mind to find out that the entire case hinged on false testimony, and that the false testimony was being done in a way that would make the whole thing crumble. And he makes this really good point that, if Zimmerman had been found guilty, maybe some of this would have come out. But because he wasn't found guilty, it almost seems that all parties involved, even though they knew there were multiple felonies on all different levels of the law on the side of the Trayvon Martin case, because Zimmerman got off, it was like, let's pick our battles here. Like it didn't go the direction it could have, so let's just keep moving on. Let's not open that wound back up again. But I mean, we're still seeing the after effects of that. I feel like we're going to be seeing the after effects of Trayvon Martin and George Floyd for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, that's for sure, and that's why I think we decided, because I said the all for Floyd first, and originally when I saw the all for Floyd, I it was in a 2020 time when I'm just catching up on documentaries. That's the time when I tell people that I came out of retirement, like I used to, I started talking. I didn't used to talk about this stuff, but it got crazy. The world needed me back. So I was just diving deep in any conspiracy and just watching everything. And at the time I got kind of caught up. But when I got to backtrack, which is good about this series, is that we get to pause and go, wait, what was he saying? And I'm looking through a different lens, because I think during these 3 episodes, it's like you kind of gave a little to me where I was able to be like, yeah, what is a documentary? You started questioning, like, what are the criteria of a documentary? Like, do I learn something? How is it, the footage shot? How is the bed of music? How are the scenes? Like, is this a documentary? And I think that now we're looking at things nostalgia wise that we might like, but if it doesn't fit into that box anymore, we're able to give it a real clear, unbiased rating.
Yeah, it's actually kind of hard because at the extremes, that Ed Burns talking about the Civil War, yeah, that's a documentary.
Yeah.
And the latest Disney Marvel movie, okay, that's not a documentary. But there's a lot that are right on the line. And I guess growing up, to me, until maybe the last 10 or 20 years, for the most part, documentary was something kind of boring and long and something you kind of had to like work at. It was doing like research or homework or something. But over the last couple decades, man, like the production quality and just the snark and the writing and all that of documentaries, I feel like they've always been good, but I've just been starting to notice how good certain ones are. And also, I feel that, I mean, I grew up watching History Channel, type documentaries and stuff. Like, here's a bunch of ants killing wasps or whatever. But when it came to like a documentary that I personally sought out and watched and talked about, it was always conspiracy theory stuff. And a conspiracy theory documentary is its own sort of special breed within all this too, right? Almost anything that talks about conspiracy theory to me is kind of a documentary, even if you wanted to get into the Men Who Stared at Goats. Not saying we would watch that one on Under the Docks, the one that has like George Clooney and stuff, but even that one feels like you could make an argument that is more of a documentary than some other movies that are labeled documentary.
Perfect example, I Am Racist, right? Like, we both agree that's not really a documentary. Like, it's fun, it's entertaining, it has some stuff. There's no new evidence, though. There's no like real storyline except, hey, let's go out there. It's a bunch of skits, right? But it's labeled as a documentary, so that's kind of that line you're talking about.
It's, to me, it is the closest thing to a true right-wing Colbert Report, where it's not making fun of himself, and he's a little bit self-aware, but I don't know, man. It has a very specific right-wing edge to it, right? Like, I can tell the difference between like leftists being funny racist on SNL and then like a Daily Wire person being funny racist, through like a Daily Wire sort of. It's weird. I don't know if I can quantify it, and I wonder if you would be able to tell the difference in a complete vacuum. Like, if you didn't know who Daily Wire was or Matt Walsh or any of these people were, and you just kind of saw clip of the Daily Show, clip of SNL, clip of Daily Wire making jokes, if you'd even be able to pick all those apart. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you would be able to. I thought you said it great in you said it was this Steven Crowder an hour and a half Steven Crowder flick.
I mean, Matt Walsh, to me, I realized right away, like, oh, this is what I've seen Steven Crowder doing. Yeah. Although Steven Crowder's is way more blog oriented, kind of like live format. One of my favorite things that I've seen Steven Crowder do, and it was just obnoxious. It wasn't like he was changing the world, but they would go and line up outside of like a welfare office or something, and they would dressed up in full tuxedos with tails and like little canes and talking in this very like old world British accents and just generally causing a nuisance with this line. But I don't know I think what I find interesting about it is that I wouldn't do that. Even if I thought it would be funny to do that, I just wouldn't do that. It's not in me to go out and actually stir up stuff and be like a public performer. So I find it entertaining. And that's kind of what Matt Walsh does. Matt Walsh does some things that are pretty ballsy that it's just not in me to do. Maybe I'm just not interested in dressing up like a left-wing guy and like, having like a man bun and go. I guess I'd be screwed, right? I don't know how I could transform my look to be accepted in some of those groups. I can't put a man bun on.
I guess you'd have to dye your beard, man. That's the only thing we can
That
do.
would be very easy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you'd be just have a blue beard, and they'll be like, "Oh,
Out of list, you're good to go."
Yeah. And then, you got to get the little nose ring, right? The little
the septum piercing.
No, but that's funny that you say that because I feel the same way, but for a different reason. Like I am a super outgoing person. I'm a super like I like to, but I won't do that, right? Like I don't want to like I'll debate with people or like I'll be animated, but I don't want to like dress up like a leftist. Like I just think it's like I'll get bored of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, this joke has been done, man. Like, all right, you got a man bun. After like 10 minutes, it's like, all right, man, let's move on. We've seen this.
It's a very specific shtick, but
Yeah.
I do think that if you like that shtick even a little bit, then the Matt Walsh "Am I Racist" is worth watching. Like if you can get over what you think it's going to be about, it is. It's exactly what you kind of think the movie's going to end up being. Maybe a little bit less racist than you'd expect. In fact, I think that he was pretty good at being nuanced about it. Like the way the movie starts is probably as deep and as introspective as it gets, but the whole way the movie starts is that he goes to a diner and his waitress is black and she asks how he wants his coffee and he's hesitating on just saying black. He can't just be like, I want it black, because now he feels awkward to say the word black instead of, and I mean, there's no other way to order it. It's like he's going to say like, oh, give it to me African-American style or something. That's kind of what he's implying, is that all these weird semantic like catches that you got to go through. So, I mean, again, he doesn't like change anything about the world in any of this. If anything, he just kind of forces you to laugh a little bit. And I feel like the only people that might get changed by this would be someone that would identify themselves as like one of these, white guilt people, and they see how silly Matt Walsh is being, and if they're trying to go through their head like, well, that's not true because, oh crap, maybe that is true. That's probably the best impact that this movie could have on anybody.
And that's like a maybe still, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah. if you're even watching Daily Wire, then it means that you're probably not like dyed in the wool style.
And don't get me wrong, I think this film was entertaining. Like, I wouldn't go against it. Like, I would tell someone like, yeah, if it's like on Netflix or something and you have you have some time to kill, it's an entertaining watch. I wouldn't go like, you gotta see it, but I also wouldn't go against it. But like, I'd be like, yeah, if you got some time to kill, man, it's all right to watch. You're on a plane.
if you're on a plane, that'll be a good one. But also, this was a theatrical release, which is kind of unheard of for documentaries in general. So, and this one again was kind of on the line of documentary, but if this is a documentary, then like a Jerky Boys live video is a documentary, not the movie, not the Jerky Boys movie, but the Jerky Boys also had like a VHS mixtape where they went into a Walmart or a Home Depot and were doing Jerky Boys stuff live. Like, I would consider that maybe a documentary too, like prank type stuff, because it's real world. I don't know. Again, this is like weird on the cusp type of where we had to decide whether or not this was acceptable. So, but we get to decide because there's two of us.
Yeah. and we got to be, I like it, the role of now being more critical to the films, like, and really trying to dissect it, and just instead of being like, oh, it's cool. Because at first I was kind of thinking like, oh, well, I liked it. But then it's like, well, why did you like it? And then you can go analyze, and you really looking through a lens of like, all right, I'm gonna critique this. Like, what did they do? What's good? Like, and I think we started right off with that, especially when we'd had like all the first money masters of where we loved it, but we're like, the audio, man, the style of it is a little outdated, but like you said, that's like the original style of documentaries. It wasn't necessarily fun. You're like, I gotta watch this, man. It's got a lot of information I need, and I'm gonna do what I gotta do. And once you got over that and you were used to it, you were fine watching documentaries. But in the 2000s, it just smacked us in the face with like boom, boom, like colors, transitions, better music, where we're like, oh, okay, now the standard has upped its game a little bit.
I mean, you could say the same thing about cinema. You go and watch a movie that had really high ratings from like 1973. You're like, okay, I mean, unless we're talking a Kubrick film or some other like very specific film, but in general, like their blockbusters can't hold a candle to even kind of a crappy one now, just because they know how to hit the dopamine receptors a little bit easier now, right?
I could give you a perfect example. I think it was Child's Play 2 or 1, and my daughter was about 7-ish, and we were watching it, and she's laughing because she's already seen crazier graphics, and this was like 15-ish years ago or whatever, 13 years ago, something like that. And she's like, what is that silly little? And I'm like, yeah, it does kind of look cheesy, huh? Like, wow, that was frightening to me when I was a kid. Like, and you're just chuckling up over here like it ain't no thing.
Yeah, Chucky was for real in the day, man. By the way, Child's Play 3 is the best of the Child's Plays.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. The one with the little black kid at the boot camp, that one's like my favorite one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one's awesome. Yeah, that is the best one. I agree. But
I wanted to talk about the All for Floyd a little bit one too. This was the Weatherman, and I went into this one completely blind. I didn't do any research on where it came from or who made it until after I like watched it and took all my notes. And I got a little bit of pushback from people. No one's being mad or anything, but disappointment that it didn't get a glowing rating. And man, I mean, I can see now it came from sort of a QAnon. So at the height of QAnon, it kind of got put together, and that sort of connected all the dots for me. I realized, oh, okay, that's why they had all these unfounded claims, and they were like bending over backwards to tie like Masons and the LGBT movement and like Satanism and morgues and all this to get in like Haiti. You know what I mean? Like all of that weird kind of random shoot from the hip connections. It makes more sense within the context of QAnon. But going into that, not knowing that, it was just like, man, where did this come? What Facebook group, put this thing together?
And that's kind of how it was. And they just didn't have any substantial evidence. It was just like, hey, well, they had speculation, which some of it was cool speculation, but it was no new information that we got. A lot of like just tossing things out there and seeing if they would stick. It's almost like if me and you were talking about a crime happening and we're like, hey, what do you think happened? And you're like, well, if it was me, this, and this. And that's what he's breaking down. But I liked it when I saw it, I think, because I was caught in the wisp. Because he dropped it literally, I think, like a week or 3 weeks, somewhere in that time frame after the George Floyd incident. So everything was so fresh and there was so much information that when I think people were caught up. If you really go back and watch it, you're going to be like, yeah, this didn't hold up. It's not that the guy didn't do a good job. Maybe if he redid it and he'd have more things to base it on, and maybe he rushed it, and that would be a difference.
Maybe let's compare it to like one of the gold standards, which would be Loose Change, because Loose Change was somewhat similar in that there was no less than 3, maybe even 4 different versions. There was the very first edition, then they had kind of a recut edition, and then they had an HD remaster / recut where they refined it even more. And I know that I saw the very OG one that came out, because when we rewatched the HD remaster version 3, whatever the hell that the whole title was, there was definitely a few things that were skipped in that I remember. It was like, oh, they didn't talk about the Shanksville collapsed salt mine. They didn't talk about this other stuff. And maybe that's because when they went to go and get that extra research and context, it was like, oh, maybe that's not true, or oh, maybe there's not enough to substantiate that claim. And they had all this other material that they could substantiate, so why not focus on like the smoking gun that you can prove? And as I was watching All for Floyd, I was wondering, okay, what if they followed the Loose Change model where they re-edited it, they HD remastered, they backed up some of the claims? how many of those claims and here's the proof that the Oddfellows are connected to the Masons, are connected to Nation of Islam and this, this group in Haiti, and here's the proof that George Floyd and Derek Chauvin knew each other through the adult industry, and here's some more evidence about human trafficking, and here's evidence about how these morgues and how these retirement or funeral homes are all connected. But I have a strong feeling that if they try and actually prove all that stuff out, they'd end up having to cut it, and you'd be left with like a 15-minute George Floyd doc that really hinges on not a lot of people showed up to his to his like wake/funeral thing that knew him. No, not a lot of people from his high school or his coaches ever really showed up in interviews. It was all people that didn't know him that ended up being on the news. And I find that interesting, but there's no smoking gun there. It's just like, hey, maybe this guy didn't have a lot of friends, or he burnt every bridge throughout the rest of his life, so that, there wasn't a lot of people on his side until after he died.
Also, I think but then again, this is a big if, they actually dug up and got some research. I think the best angle for me that they should have kept on and not gone into this extra was the Minneapolis Police Department having a drug ring, right? It was that kind of makes sense to me. And now, was there somebody connected in that? They should have went down that rabbit hole, I think, and they might have found more things. They just threw that out there briefly, like, yeah, well, they could have been selling drugs and having sex trafficking with children. And then you're like, okay, well, then they go, and the Oddfellows, and you're like, wait, let's go back to the thing that maybe we could prove. And you kind of made a little bit of a good case when they're talking about the Club Nuevo and these certain burning down like, logically, it made sense to me, that part of, hey, these specific buildings burnt down, and if there was a drug ring or any human trafficking ring with the Minneapolis Police Department, the one main building that would have all the evidence burnt down, which is the police department, that would be the angle I think that they could actually make this film into to salvage it, right? But the big if is, where does it lead you when you get the evidence? I don't know that to be true. It sounds good, but I don't have any evidence to back that up. So if I'm going to redo the film, I would have to get that evidence.
There's a certain aspect to it where it's fun to be like, Hitler's riding a dinosaur on the moon right now, like just to conjure it up as the possibility. There's something fun about that. But then to be the one that has to be like, no, that's not possible because of X, Y, and Z. Now you're being boring. And no one wants the boring part. They like the fun part where you get to be like, yo, maybe they were like working in the corn industry, and maybe they were trafficking people, and also it ties in a Nation of Islam, and it's fun to start dropping and putting all these connections together. To actually put it together, I feel like if they did a remaster of this one, they sort of shot themselves in the foot a little bit too, because they were trying to be so topical so quick. You mentioned this came out within like a week or a month of the actual George Floyd event. But if they had taken like a couple years and go back to it, there's a few things in this movie that I saw happen in the movie that they didn't piece together that I did, because we've got the retrospective, half a decade now, right? When was George Floyd? But like, now that we've got more years to sort of ferment on that, for example, who knows if Tim Walz ever would have been declared vice presidential candidate if it hadn't been for his role in George Floyd, because he was one of these white guys at the top that could do something and actually was very vocal about doing something within, I think, like Minnesota, right? So maybe we don't get Tim Walz without George Floyd. And if we don't get Tim Walz without George Floyd, maybe we didn't even get Kamala Harris without George Floyd. Maybe that dynamic. And the reason that the George Floyd movie was called Weatherman 3, and I haven't seen Weatherman 1 and 2, but I know who the Weathermen are, and I know what the general claim was, that we've got these left-wing radical organizations like Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radical style, and that they are finding any sort of national tragedy that they can jump on and adopt and just refocus all that frustration and energy into very specific leftist goals. Let's import over some radicals. Let's push for, harder communism. So all of a sudden you've got Black Lives Matter coming out, and then you have like this weather underground sort of faction, not them in particular necessarily, but just like a general socialist communist group. And they're like, seeing if we had communism or if we had socialism, that wouldn't happen, which seems patently false. But
Yeah.
they use these tragedies to constantly push everyone one way or the other. And I think that one is way more interesting, but it's also more nuanced, and you don't get to say that they're all odd fellows and that they're shipping bodies out of funeral homes.
And the first two films is basically on the weather underground of the 70s and the 80s and all the stuff they've done. So I do think that he rushed it out like, hey, this is part of that, but doesn't really explain how it's part of that. Like you said, he had a much easier task of being like, hey, this is what the weather underground is. And this, like you said, look at through this perspective, this is the kind of thing that they do. Kind of like what Joel said in the Trayvon Martin hoax, right? He said the blueprint for this is like the Democrats get a tragedy, claim the tragedy basically is because of the system or white supremacy or whatever, fill in that blank, and then boom, they make that their poster child, then run off of it, right? And they get their seeds thrown out there to grow into like, oh well, look, yeah, we're gonna be Democrats, and it's to further this cycle. And that's kind of what connects all three of these movies. Is not necessarily that they're all super hardcore conservatives, but they all like a little more conservative leaning and kind of poking at this woke socialist communist like thing that's out there, that is really out there. And the funny part is it is not good and it is trash. Like all the people that are like, oh man, comedy is gonna save us, like I've always wondered why we're still talking about the same kind of, they're like it's either communism or capitalism. I'm like, no one's come up with another thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why are we still using these outdated? Like, let's move forward. That's why I like to always tell people, I'm like, I just like the free market, right? Where it sounds like I get to have my own business. I know it's not exactly true, which will go further in on the next, what's coming up on the next three. I think, you know what I mean? That one of those films is going to really set it to where, yeah, maybe we don't have as much freedom as we think we do, but like still I like the idea of free market where I can go and start my own establishment and make some kind of money, even though I get taxed on it.
To what end, though, man? To what end? And then the third one, yeah, was the Trayvon hoax. And I would say I don't know the weatherman guy. What was the name of the guy that put out Weatherman? He's got like a whole company and a name. He got banned off of everywhere, but I think he was still on Twitter.
I had him too, but I don't remember.
Well, anyways, like I don't know if QAnon is necessarily right wing. It's definitely not left wing, but I don't know if it's right wing. It's like alt right wing or something. But I would say that Joel and Matt Walsh probably are right wing because you can find pictures of them at the Republican National Conventions and all the other like big to do events where you get your picture taken next to the president and representatives. So they're definitely not bipartisan. So I would definitely say they had their own agendas going into this. And Joel, again from the Trayvon hoax, it is one of the cheesiest documentaries I've ever seen in my life. Like I feel that he was just saving money. He's like, you know what? I can shoot everything. I'll just shoot it of me in my own living room, and I'll just use this to fly and go hang out in Miami and Orlando for a few weeks and then fly back home. Like this was all just a business write-off expense for this dude. He had a fun, you paid for his vacation essentially through this movie. But man, it was information that I hadn't seen anywhere else. And even if he hired a team of people to scrub through all of the phone records and everything else that he did, he legitimately found something that no one else seemed to have been bringing up at all. And I feel like if more people knew about the things that he was talking about while the case was going on, you would have heard some of this stuff come up. So the fact that we only learned about it after the event and after the trial had pretty much wrapped up is kind of a travesty. Like it would have been crazy if some of the information that he uncovered in his documentary found its way into the actual court case. It could have turned out totally different.
Everything would have been totally different, man. Like that would have like probably stopped a lot of bull crap, right? Like that we've seen of this whole like movement for socialism and communism, which people like really love. People hate me when I say that I don't like it. I'm like, well, it just seems kind of lame, man. I don't know.
I gotta add, what do you think happened with the Trayvon Martin event? Like, what do you think were the real sequence of events? Was it a kid was tracked down by a white nationalist Mexican, and then just like shot him in cold blood as he was eating Skittles, or what?
No, I don't think so. In my opinion, again, I wasn't there, but from piecing together what happened, I think that there was some kind of like altercation, like where they passed by each other, and maybe I think Trayvon may have been in not the greatest mood. It sounds like he was getting heartbroken over this woman, and I think he was a young teen that's full of like hormones, and he's pissed off about that. And I think he just kind of saw George Floyd, and they kind of passed each other. And I think George Floyd was, I mean, George Floyd, how'd George Floyd get there, man? Zimmerman was probably kind of being super like, top flight security, and probably like way out of his way, like didn't need to be all up and everything. And I think Trayvon and them just crossed paths at the wrong time. And he was a 17-year-old kid that pretty much got his heart broke. That's kind of leaning towards like, I'm smoking weed and drinking lean and fuck my life right now and would do whatever, right? Like, I think, and they got into a scuffle, and Zimmerman had a gun, and the gun wins.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way based on what we've seen in this movie and a few other ones, but that no one was free from fault here, and it seems that top flight security, like
Yeah.
Zimmerman was doing too much. He was Paul Blart mall copping it like a little bit too hard. He was LARPing a little bit as this neighborhood watch cop, right? We all know someone that gets a little bit too hard when they're allowed to give out like hall passes or something, and it goes to their head. So you got that dynamic. You got Trayvon, who's feeling like nothing to lose. He's getting kicked out of school. He's playing with guns and drugs. I don't even care about the drug thing, lean and weed and whatever else they pinned on him. I think all that was just straight character assassination, just because it's easy, low hanging fruit to do. It's way more nuanced to talk about like the heartbreak thing. And also, man, if anyone else had started talking about the heartbreak thing, the real girlfriend and the fake girlfriend would have come to the surface immediately. So it was almost easier to just talk about the guns and the drugs and not get into that nuance where the seams might have been at. And then ultimately, I think that Zimmerman was getting his ass kicked, and and he had an option to stop getting his ass kicked. And in Florida, this wasn't a stand your ground kind of thing, I don't believe, but in Florida, maybe it was a stand your ground and just not a castle doctrine. Castle doctrine is like when they come into your house, but it was just a straight up non-Florida version of self-defense and perfect storm. Like, it was an absolute tragedy all ways around. And I don't think it matters one bit whether the Skittles were for lean or if the Skittles were just because he wanted an iced tea and Skittles. Like, even if he was doing lean that night, even if he smoked all the weed in the world that night, none of that really means that it had to go in tragedy. The tragedy was because, as this documentary points out, Trayvon was kind of on a world star hip hop style, like beat everybody up kind of kick. Like, he was getting into fights at school. He picked a fight with a bus driver. He picked a fight with a teacher. Like, he was in the mode of getting into fights with adults as a minor. So yeah, he picked one that he shouldn't have picked.
Yeah, and he was a lot bigger than Zimmerman as well, so I could see that. And I think, again, Zimmerman not in the right place. And the character assassination does get annoying too. Like, even with some of the George Floyd stuff, where it's like, look, man, whatever somebody did, I don't need to. And if Trayvon was smoking more weed and lean, he probably wouldn't even been there. Right? You know what I'm saying? He would have been sitting in some room or some like almost passed out. But yeah, they use this, and I think this is a point that people could take from like the other side of the media, right? Whether you're left or right or whatever side you're on, when your bias comes out and you go after these stories of like, yeah, he's a drug addict, he was a criminal, you may lose some of the actual facts of the case that could change everything. You know what I mean? That can like actually blow this case wide open. You're talking about he's a thug, he's this and that, and yes, there was aggression and all that, but if you go to the heartbreak and the bad adolescence and the split up of his home, obviously not being around his mom and kind of being in this new mom character that was also probably playing effect. And I think that he just wasn't in the right place, and he's an adolescent and he's a big kid and he's hanging around the wrong people. That happened to a lot of people, and he just ran into a guy that was way too nosy, shouldn't have been as nosy as he was, but that doesn't mean you can't defend yourself. And Trayvon's much bigger than Zimmerman. I think he did get on top of him, and I think Zimmerman has a case of where I don't know if he could have got up. He got beat up pretty bad.
Just because they're both in roughly the same area, this is like right in my neck of the woods. I really just, if there's like a Hollywood producer out there, we've got enough trash TV and like dumb stuff going on. We need like a George Zimmerman and Casey Anthony like dating investigative show where maybe they pair up to find the real killer of Kaylee Anthony. You know what I mean? Like, because she also was found not guilty. So they're like, we're gonna, if it's the last thing we do, we're gonna find out what happened, right?
We're gonna
that would be gold, man.
I actually like that, man. Reality TV. Oh yeah, dude. You got something right there, man. Now that's an exit strategy, man. We might not be seen as doing Under the Docks anymore. It'll be big time. Have Casey Anthony.
It could happen. It was all right here in Central Florida, man. Both of those things kind of rocked my world. I didn't know George Zimmerman personally or anything. It just happened to be in Sanford, so it like all of the big protests and everything. It didn't get as big as the George Floyd protests. Obviously, no one was like setting fire to downtown Sanford, but it was absolutely a huge event. And man, if you start looking at the history of the city of Sanford and some of the surrounding areas, there's some crazy like racist tragedies in some of those areas. So it just kind of brings a bunch of stuff up to the surface. But luckily, these documentaries and us at Under the Docks are fixing race relations one step at a time. So all that's settled now. They're like all lives. No. How many? Can't even tell what lives matter anymore. None. No lives matter. How about that one?
Yeah, that's a little bit better. I like that. You know what? We're changing the aspect of this. You know, let's go after the lizard people, right? That's how we're gonna. It's not us. It's the lizard people.
Yeah, I mean, careful, because then when you say lizard people, it's like, what do you mean lizard people?
I forgot that. That's why I was thinking earlier when you're talking about Hitler and the dinosaur. I was like, were you listening to some Yee this morning? Or
No, he's over, man. Ye said that like he's done with the anti-Semitism stuff. He's done now.
Oh, after the album, it was just for the album.
Yeah, no, it was all leading up to that crazy album release, and yeah, now that it's out, he's moved on to the next thing.
What's that going to be, dude? Does anybody know yet? Now that's a documentary, man. We got to follow. I have seen. Have you seen the Kanye West documentary though? Like the one on Netflix, the 3-part series.
Yeah, isn't it crazy that as soon as that one came out, he completely changed his trajectory again? I'm sure they were like, "Damn, I wish we would have left time to just throw in like part 5 on that thing."
Yeah, keep this thing going, man. Like, what are we doing? They had a money train right there.
I feel like, yeah, we could probably do like a Kanye documentary month.
We'll have to throw that in there at some point, man. You want to like divulge some of the coming soons, like the next.
Yeah, we got a couple. We've been recording a bunch of these in bulk, so we've got an Alex Jones month coming up where we watch 3 of the most classic Alex Jones documentaries. I think it was Police State 2000, Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, which was also kind of has a section of John Ronson in there. And then we watched The Truth vs. Alex Jones, which is the HBO hit piece on him. I don't think it's biased to say that. The HBO hit piece on Alex Jones. And then after we do those 3, we're going to do a Michael Moore month where we're going to watch 3 different Michael Moore documentaries. So I feel like that's a decent amount of balance.
Jones versus Moore. Jones versus Moore. Get there while you can. You know, we need that celebrity death match part over.
That's not hard. That's easy to do with AI now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true. Huh? We could just, hey, AI, do stuff for me. I'm getting better with it, man. Now I'm starting to use it a little bit more.
So we'll try and do like this theme thing. I think the theme thing works pretty well. It's harder to line up the months so that we do like horror documentaries and drop it around on Halloween or like October. We'll figure that out as we go, but I do like doing the 3 at a time, all some kind of specific theme. So if anyone wants to see any other specific themes or any other specific documentaries, conspiracy ones do get priority, but as we mentioned a few different times, we're going to end up at some point watching sports documentaries and music documentaries. So it's not just all going to be conspiracy theory. I just want to make sure I get all of those out of my system because those ones I care about the most.
Yeah, and they're the ones that kind of got us into documentaries, like you said, our first choices of it. But be warned that if you have a suggestion or like of something, we may and we don't like it, don't get so mad. You know what I mean? We might not. It might sink. It might swim.
I hope they do. I hope we do find a decent amount of sinks here, but for the most part, I think a lot are going to be swims because we're not intentionally going after bad documentaries. We're going after ones that are highly rated, highly recommended, or they just sound wild. For example, we've got 3 about MK Ultra that we already recorded that'll be coming out soon, and one of those was just if you just search for MK Ultra documentary on Apple, it's like the only thing that comes up. And I'd never heard of it or seen it. I don't think you'd ever heard of it or seen it. We watched that one, not because it was great or because it was recommended. It was just very easy to find. And I have to imagine that some, 13-year-old hears MK Ultra the first time and they open up their iPad and they type it in. That's probably what they're going to end up seeing. So I kind of want to get my head around what are these kids coming out watching and getting their brain molded by.
Yeah, what's the algorithm pushing them to without us? Like when we put MK Ultra now, it's like, hey, it's this new Disney show.
100%. That's how it's going to work. Just like if we were 13 and we were going online and searching for Walt's Frozen Head or Disney's Frozen Head, you're finding crazy documentaries about cryogenics and Walt wanting to come back to life. You do that now in 25 and you search for Disney Frozen Head, you're just going to find a bunch of stuff about Elsa and like the head of art, like creative art department or something. Like Disney Frozen now doesn't have the same results. The same thing with MK Ultra. And you can clearly see that they're filtering out the crazy Fritz Springmeier, David Icke, Alex Jones results that we're so used to being able to see for the last 2 decades plus.
Good old Disney.
So that's it, man. You got any other shout outs or we can wrap it up here?
Don't forget to go to paranoidamerican.com and killthemockingbirds.com to find all of our podcasts or comics or anything that we got up on there. And just thank everybody tuning in. I think you're going to like a lot of the next, especially I think the next like 9 or so. I think that's going to be pretty good. Well,
that's the next 30 or so. They're all going to be pretty good.
All right, y'all. Peace.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real, the real, you will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blood smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.